This is Dance Studio 411, where we answer your real-life questions about your toughest studio life predicaments. Parent problems, teacher turnover, student challenges, policy dilemmas, and so much more. Let's talk about what's keeping you awake at night and what you can do about it. Here are your hosts, Suzanne Blake Garrity and Jill Tyrone.
Hey everyone, welcome. I'm your host, Jill Tyrone, and I'm really excited for today's episode. I had the pleasure of meeting Christine Jones this past summer, and I knew as soon as I met her, I wanted to have her as a guest on the Dance Studio 411 podcast. Christine founded mUvmethod, which is a dance conditioning system based on yoga and Pilates and backed by science. As you listen, Christine's knowledge and expertise is clearly evident, but it's her passion that really shines through. She truly wants to make a more positive impact in dancers' lives, both physically and emotionally. Today, we're digging deep and we're getting to the truth about overstretching, what it is, the reason it's happening now more than ever, and specific solutions to avoid overstretching while safely maximizing flexibility and joint range of motion. Our main goal with this recording is to create more clarity around what to stretch, when to stretch, and how to stretch. She even tells us how you can create amazing results at your studio while actually spending less time each week stretching. So let's dive right in and get started with my interview with Christine Jones of mUvmethod. Hi, Christine. I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Hi, Jill. Excited to be here.
Great. So we are on the topic of overstretching, and we are going to cover a lot of territory in the short time that we're going to be here together. But before we do that, I would love for you to give all of us a background about you, how you got started, and how mUvmethod came about.
Okay, so mUvmethod came about, really, I say it's been 25 years in the making, actually. So I grew up dancing, and I did mainly ballet, so that's where I started, and during that time, I actually sustained some injuries. So I hurt my knees pretty badly, lots of damaged cartilage. I was young, I was dancing. I was actually dancing with quite a few kids that were older and had this amazing natural range where I had fine turnout. I just didn't have the most amazing turnout. And being a young child and not really knowing, I just started rotating for my knees, trying to increase the rotation. Well, this led to quite a few problems down the road. So knees start to bother me. My mom's talking, to the studio, what's going on? What should we be doing? Which led to physical therapy, which led to them saying, maybe take a little break. So I took some time off dance. Knees started to feel better. And I went back. And when I went back, I got into other areas. So I started taking jazz and hip hop and all these contemporary, these new things, and they were really fun. And it actually worked in my favor. I think it took some pressure off the knees. And while I took time off, I did some rehab. I learned some things about the body and realized what I was doing wrong and was able to somewhat correct that. However, I also had problems with my hip flexors, as many dancers do, and I sustained a pretty substantial injury to my right hamstring. So I love dancing. I grew up dancing, but about age 19, I said, you know what? I feel old, and I'm 19. I should not feel old.
Not at all.
No. So I thought, I'm going to take a little break. So I'll go focus on teaching dance because I still want to be in that space. I love dance. I love being around it, but I'm going to take a break physically myself. And I got into college at the University of Utah, and I had this idea as I started college and really started to dive into teaching that there had to be a better way to condition dancers. And I really made it my mission at, the age of 19 to find a better way. So that essentially, based on kind of my experience and the pain and the injuries that I had sustained growing up, and then really wanting to help dancers move forward in a safe and more effective manner, just led me through a lot of education that really led to the creating of mUvmethod, which actually led to us specializing in stretching. So I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, you know what, we're going to specialize in stretching because that's one of the key components to dance conditioning. No, it evolved. It evolved with me having an experience, me having a thought that we could improve the experience with the right dance conditioning, And that led me to exercise physiology at the University of Utah, which led me to becoming a fully certified Stop Pilates instructor, which led me to becoming an instructor trainer for Stop Pilates, which led me to opening a Pilates studio, to selling my studio, to starting a family. And eventually it led me to 500 hours of yoga teacher training. And all of these trainings really came together to create mUvmethod. So I pulled what I loved from Pilates and started doing those things with the dancers I was teaching. So all the while, no matter what I was doing, I was always still teaching dance. So when I was going to the university, I was teaching dance. When I was doing my Pilates path, I was still teaching dance. Yoga path, still teaching dance. Being a mom, still teaching dance. So I started to pull from these methodologies what I really liked and what I felt benefited the dancer. And I did some trial and error. I did a lot of observing. I did a lot of analyzing results. And I did a lot of picking and choosing. While I love Pilates, not every aspect of Pilates is beneficial for a dancer. Same thing with yoga. So over the last 25 years, it's just kind of been refining itself. And it led to me teaching only conditioning dancers with some dancers in my area. Actually, it's called Highlight Dance. It's in Alpine, Utah. I started teaching just my conditioning methods with them and had no intent at the time to ever scale this program. I was just really trying to kind of fulfill my mission of finding a better way to impact our dancers through, really effective physical conditioning methods, I guess, if that makes sense.
It does.
So,
And that's so important. And you clearly have an amazing background, the education and the hands-on experience, which is why I'm so happy to have you here today, because I think we're going to lead right into our topic today, which is overstretching. And I really want to dive in particularly on that because we're seeing it so much now. But why don't we start with actually just a definition? What can you tell us about overstretching and, what's happening in dance today with that?
okay. So overstretching. So if we were to define it, the definition I like and that I use often is we say overstretching is the term used when one stretches a muscle or body part to the point of strain or injury. So this happens when you stretch a muscle, a tendon, or a ligament beyond their capacity in terms of flexibility and range of motion. So we're extending beyond a place that's safe. And we're doing it with muscles, we're doing it with tendons, and we can do it with ligaments. Now, I do think it's important to take a moment and define these things, like what is a muscle? What is it capable of? What's it responsible for doing? Why do we love muscles? Muscles are so great. I love what they are capable of, and we actually really focus on the muscular system at mUvmethod, what are tendons and what are ligaments. So a muscle is a form of tissue that is involved in movement. We talk about muscles all the time. Most of us are pretty familiar with a muscle and what's responsible of, but they contract, they can create movement, but they also release to allow for movement. So when it comes to stretching, you want to look at muscles from the term of, like, from the perspective of opposition. So what movement does this muscle produce? In what movement does this muscle oppose? And when you understand the opposition, when you understand what that particular movement or muscle opposes, then we know how to stretch it or what we need to stretch to improve certain movements, if that makes sense. I kind of went on a little tangent there. But the really important thing, or the really cool thing to know about muscles, is that they can lengthen a ton. So a muscle, according to research, is able to lengthen up to 150% of its actual resting length. That's a lot. So that
is a
tells
lot.
us, you know what? Your hamstring can actually lengthen really far with the right methods. So we need to understand that there is a method to creating the length change. And that's all flexibility is. Flexibility is the ability of a muscle to move through a greater length change. Now, things that can get in the way of this are your muscular system, and obviously the muscle, if we're not teaching it how to go through the length change, and the skeletal system. But right now we won't dive too far into those things. I will mention your muscular system a little bit more later on,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can learn to work with it so that we can improve our flexibility, because we're not just working with one system when it comes to flexibility. There are multiple things happening inside the body, things that we need to be aware of when moving forward if we want to avoid things like overstretching while safely improving flexibility and mobility.
Exactly. And
So
you mentioned the tendons and the ligaments as well. And when in my mind, I pictured overstretching only dealing with the muscle. So tell me how the ligaments and the tendons actually come into play for overstretching as well.
yeah, so we're actually seeing, I actually believe that more of the overstretching is actually happening in tendons and ligaments.
Mm.
And those are the tissues we do not want to overstretch. The thing about a muscle is this: it's a highly vascular tissue. It's also highly innervated. So that means it has good communication with us. So when we hurt a muscle, it will tell us really quickly.
Mhm.
So when we stretch beyond its capacity, really quickly, it's going to say, hey, I don't like that. And you're going to feel pain. Well, it's also highly vascular. So when we do go beyond its capacity to stretch or lengthen, it heals much more effectively. So
Mhm.
it's got better communication with us, so it can say stop doing that. But then if we don't listen, which often we don't, and we do strain it, we can heal it much more effectively. Now that's not the case with our tendons and our ligaments. So tendons attach a muscle to bone, and they are very involved in movement. So there's always a force transfer. So a muscle contracts, that force should generate to the tendon, and the tendon should pull on the bone, and that's how we create movement. If we stretch a tendon, that force is not going to generate as well. So we just compromised our movement. And dance is just movement after movement after
Mhm.
movement, quick movement. And so if we are stretching tendons, we decrease the ability for them to generate the needed force to move the bone to create movement. So we lost efficiency.
Okay,
We
good.
do not want to lose efficiency
Mhm.
as a dancer. Now, tendons are made up of, it's called dense regular connective tissue. There are a bunch of long collagenous fibers running in the same direction. These are not vascular tissues. So
Mhm.
when we injure a tendon, it does not heal very well. So we don't want to stretch them. I just tell you don't want to stretch those. Don't stretch those. Focus on the muscular system. We know
Mhm.
the muscles can lengthen, so that's where we should be pulling our length from.
Got it.
Now, ligaments attach bone to bone.
Mhm.
Same tissue, not vascular, not highly innervated, so the communication isn't so much there when we're going beyond the place it likes to go.
Mhm.
So you want to think of your ligaments as defining the range of motion in a joint. So your ligaments are kind of like, they're saying, hey, you know what? You can go this way. You can even go this way, but we really don't like when you go this way. And they will try to stop that movement. Well, we can force through pretty much anything, whether it's an external force, so somebody can force you right through that range where the ligament's saying, I don't
Mhm.
want you to go here. Now, we can also physically force ourselves there by pushing ourselves too far into our stretches. Neither one of those things are good things, because once we tear a ligament, we just lost stability of a joint. Or once we even strain
Mhm.
one. So a dancer, it's a complicated matter, because here's the thing: we want to be highly mobile,
Right.
but we also have to be stable.
Mhm.
So the two things need to be balanced. And at some point, we as dance educators and studio owners have to say, how far are we willing to go for the sake of mobility? How much stability are we willing to lose? And I'm not, at mUvmethod, we are actually not willing to lose stability. We are
Mhm.
only willing to create as much flexibility as we can while maintaining the integrity of the joint. If
Exactly.
that
And that's the beauty of all of this. And you're going to talk more about your actual program and how that's accomplished in a little bit. So why are we seeing overstretching so much? Is it due to more social media and just because we're able to capture it more and it's more visible? Or I know you have a couple of really good reasons either why we're seeing it or why it's happening more.
Yeah. So I think it's probably always been there to some degree, but I do believe we've seen it elevate. And maybe that's due to being able to capture it, but I don't really think that's the case. I actually think it's because one of the reasons I think it is. So first, let's just I think we need to understand that dance has evolved. So dance now is not what dance was 50 years ago or even 5 years ago. Like
Right.
it's just so different, which is amazing. We want to evolve. We want to change. We want to grow. We want to, you know, push new limits, I guess, and just see like, what can we actually do? What are we capable of? However, when something evolves, so when the movements are evolving, the conditioning behind the way we get to the movements needs to also evolve. Okay.
Sure.
And I think that's where there's been maybe a bit of a disconnect. So dance is evolving, but are our stretchings evolving as well? So I would say probably not. So that's one of the reasons. So I think we've evolved in dance, but we aren't meeting the new demands of dance as well as we could. Now, when that happens, we're actually kind of forced to look outside of our community or outside of our genre. And we might start looking to other areas. And if we're trying to improve flexibility, it only makes sense that we would look to certain genres like maybe contortionism and say, hey, you know what? These people are highly, highly flexible. How do I get flexible like a contortionist?
Sure.
And the problem when we do that is we have to understand we're not comparing apples to apples. So the demands of a contortionist or the goals of a contortionist are not the same as a dancer. So while they are both performers, they're doing different things. Now, can a contortionist become highly flexible in a safe way? Yes, they can, and they do. Now, but they spend hours and hours and hours refining and perfecting their trade or their sport or their art. Now, a dancer is not training to become a contortionist. Therefore, are the stretches in that world or that genre beneficial for a dancer? And I think the answer to that is yes and no. I think we can pull some of them. I think we can learn from them, but I think we also need to be realistic in our understanding and say, hey, this contortionist just trained for 5 years to get into a back bend, and their back is equally strong and mobile. Is a dancer only training to get into a back bend? No, she needs to be able to do this, or he or she needs to be able to do all these other things as well. So will that stretch regimen really benefit this person? And then you have to make a choice there, right? So a contortionist curriculum or whatever they're following is not dance specific, it's contortionist specific. So a dancer needs to follow a curriculum that is dance specific. So can we pull from other genres? Yes, we can. I have done it myself. We pull from yoga, we pull from Pilates, but like I mentioned earlier, there are plenty of things I've thrown out and said, no, I don't actually think that is beneficial for a dancer, so I'm not going to do it. We're just not going to do it.
Right. And you really key in on safety, you really key in on what is happening and what the goal is. Like you said, the goal is not in this case to be a contortionist. It is to be a healthy dancer who has the right balance between the strength and the flexibility. So
yes, absolutely. So I think that's maybe where one of the disconnects has happened, like with why we're seeing this glamorization of extremes and flexibility, and why we're seeing overstretching happening. And it's just because the goals aren't aligning. That's kind of the way I like to see it. Like the goal of the contortionist is not the same as the dancer, so therefore we need to tweak the stretches that we're going to pull from that genre if that's something that we choose to do.
Is overstretching or really pushing the body ever safe?
So by definition, no, overstretching is not safe, because if we follow that definition, saying we're taking a muscle, a tendon, a ligament too far, we're taking it to a point where it's not meant to go, then I'm going to say no. And at mUvmethod, I'm very firm on that. Like, we don't stretch joints. So for example, all stretches that we teach active static stretching or active dynamic stretching. Why? Because it keeps the joint safe while creating a release in the musculature we're trying to target. In fact, it actually strengthens the joint. So for example, we have stretches, we have one, I'll use an example, crescent moon. It's a stretch that targets the hip flexor. Now you could passively move into that stretch and actually probably start to stretch the tendon of your hamstring, as well as put some of the ligaments at risk if you were passively sinking into the stretch. Well, we ask that our dancers activate their hamstring, which elevates the pelvis, which prevents them from passively sinking into the joint, because I'm not willing to stretch somebody's joints. Even though, will it work? Absolutely. If I stretch your ligaments and your tendons, you will improve, your joint mobility will improve, but it comes at the cost of stability. So the risk is not worth the reward, in my opinion. So we want to focus on pulling length from the muscular system while allowing the tendons and the ligaments to continue doing their job. If certain things in the body aren't able to do their job, then we're setting ourselves up for pain, for injury, and we're not setting ourselves up for success. So I think you have to be very clear in your beliefs and where you stand, so that you know, because it's tempting. You see these kids being put in the splits, and it can be so tempting, because does it work? Yeah, it works, but it comes with a cost, and so you have to balance.
And that's the important thing, that the big takeaway here that I want all of our listeners to understand is that there is a way to do this where you could do it effectively, and there isn't that cost of injury or the cost of overstretching, because by your definition, overstretching is where you actually get to the point of injury. So we want to make sure that we are responsible studio owners, that if we have a curriculum in place already, that we are monitoring that we know what's happening, that the teachers are doing it well and doing it properly. And then also, Christine, I know we have some great things that you're going to offer our listeners. So why don't we tie that right into more about mUvmethod? I know you have a stretch guide that I think you're offering our listeners, which is amazing. So I'm also going to be posting those links in the replay. And then tell us more about how they can learn more about mUvmethod, because you have all of this, you've done all this, and they can bring this program right into their studios, correct?
Yes. Oh, yes, they can. And I want to just mention really quick, Jill, like it's really great to empower your students. So by following something that provides tools. So when we say, hey, we have a limitation, like we're limited by our flexibility or our joint range possibly. And then we come to our students and we say, here's a tool, like you can move beyond that limitation. It's actually quite empowering. So, so while we do specialize in stretching, and I love teaching people how to stretch because they see these amazing physical results, I really love watching what it does to the kids mentally and emotionally, because we're saying, hey, you know what? We all have limitations, and this limitation does not define you. And if you're willing to put in the work, because let's be honest, most people don't love to stretch. It's kind of boring, and it's definitely uncomfortable. So we kind of want to skip it, right? We all want to skip it. And this is actually where I think the disconnect has happened, is that dance has evolved. So dance has gone boom. But then we don't really want to put the effort into doing the stretches in a progressive manner that lead to success. So we kind of like skip it here and there. We might say, hey, dancer, stretch on your own, or I'll stretch next week, or crank the music and throw out some stretches thinking they're going to work, but they're not, which then leads us to looking to other genres to find tools to find success, which then can lead to the potential of overstretching and hurting our kids. So we can just stop all that if we slow down, educate ourselves a little bit around the fundamentals of safe stretching, and then stick to and follow a weekly stretch curriculum that provides the tools to move beyond your limitations and reach your full potential. And this is empowering for our students. This is empowering for the studio. It's empowering for the dance teacher. And I think as a studio owner, you want to have tools in your tool belt, right? When you see a problem like, hey, we're struggling with flexibility as a whole, what's the solution? And rather than having every teacher out there looking for their own solution, you can unify your studio by following a curriculum, which we lay out for you. And we're going to actually give everybody the link to check it out and try a little free trial to see what our stretch curriculum can do for you. But I think I just wanted to mention that it's not only physically beneficial, it's also mentally and emotionally beneficial. And it's going to make, and when we are impacting our students in this wonderful way, physically, mentally, and emotionally, what parent, what dancer is not happy? They're all happy, right? They want to come back. They want more. They love you.
Yeah, I love that so much because that's what we really try to help our studio owners, our members with, is giving them great tools so that they can market themselves really well. I mean, what parent doesn't want to know that they're taking their student, their son or daughter to a studio where they're going to be taught a method that is safe and it's effective both physically and emotionally? How amazing is that? So
Right.
that's why I was so drawn to you when we met this summer, is because I really believe in your philosophies. I really believe in what you're doing. I believe in the dancer as a whole. I, like you, I taught ballet for many, many, many years, and I've seen all body types. I've seen all kids of all shapes, sizes, and you're right. We're all up against limitations regardless of where you are in your abilities, in your age, it's how we get through that and how you can emotionally help them through that as well. So that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, we tell them all the time. I say, look, your limitations are an opportunity for growth.
Mhm.
So when we acknowledge it, when we give you the right tools, you learn that when you put the action in, you'll actually see the results. You know, I do this with splits. I can tell you, we get more, I get more inquiries on how
Right.
can I get my child into the splits, or from dancers. And we get more kids into the splits than probably anything. And it's so fun because we don't give them splits to do the splits. So I think it's really important that we understand, like, you can't use the splits to get the splits. The splits are the goal. So
Mhm.
what are the prerequisites? We provide all the prerequisites to reach flexibility milestones. And then they get the splits and they have this big smile on their face and they feel success and now they're motivated. And I can tell you, the studios using our curriculum are getting, so it's, they get their kids in the splits. And what does that do? That creates motivation,
Mhm.
and that creates success, and that makes it so that the student wants to stretch more, the
Mhm.
teachers want to stretch more, the parents aren't like, how do I get my kids in the splits? Because how many kids do you know that go home and just sit in the splits to get in the splits and then they injure something? It
Right.
happens all the time, and usually it's the hamstring. So we get to take that out. We get to take the injury part out, the pain part out, and then be like, here's your success. Follow these steps, and they lead to success. And we just spell it out for you, because I do know this. I know stretching can be incredibly overwhelming.
Mhm.
So with mUvmethod, we try to create clarity around what to stretch, when to stretch, how to stretch it, and we do that through trainings.
Mhm.
And then we provide implementation,
Mhm.
which takes away the overwhelm. Because when we're overwhelmed, we will not take action. And I'm sure, Jill, that a lot of your studio owners
Oh,
are overwhelmed.
all the time. And that's one of the biggest things we hear is that, when am I going to find time to do this? How am I going to implement this program? How am I going to actually make this work at my studio? I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the resourcing. So this is where you come in, Christine, because you have the program. You've laid it out for everybody and it's just easy to implement.
Yep. And that's what I went after. I just said it has to be easy to implement. Otherwise, we're not going to take action. You know, it's one thing to go out there and get great training, and there are so many great trainings out there. But then what do you do with the knowledge after? If
Mhm.
you don't have a path, if you don't have a step by step, usually we don't do anything, right? So with our, it's called our level 1 flexibility training plus weekly stretch curriculum. It allows studio owners, it allows dance instructors, and it allows dancers to access what I believe are the fundamental lessons you need to know about stretching. And you can go through those lessons in like an hour or two. It doesn't take a ton of time.
Mhm.
And then you simply provide our weekly, and then you simply follow our weekly stretch curriculum, and we literally lay it out for you. You're going to do this stretch, this stretch, this stretch, this day. And then the next week, we're going to add in a few more. And then the
Mhm.
next week, we're going to add in a few more, because we understand that studio owners, dance instructors, dancers, they are all limited with time.
Right.
And if we don't make it doable in terms of time, what are you going to do? You're going to skip. You're going to
Mhm.
skip some of the stretches, or you're going to fly through them, and then you don't learn the proper placement and alignment, which it all comes down to placement and alignment when it comes to stretching. And then we don't see the benefits. You don't see the results. So we just try to slow down the process, say, hey, it's a process. We have to be patient. We have to work through this. Flexibility doesn't happen overnight. But if you stick with it, if you are consistent, if you approach your stretches the right way, if you're doing the right stretches, you will reap rewards. You will totally see the benefits. So it just makes it really fun to share this with people, because what's better than making the studio owner happy or the dance instructor happy?
Exactly. And then when they're happy, the students are happy. So it's a win-win all the way across the board. And I love the fact that you've done this in such a way that it's a short span of time. You know, you're building a few stretches throughout the week, and it's not taking an inordinate amount of time to actually get great results. So that's fantastic. So Christine, your website.
And it will actually, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was actually going to say, it actually saves you time.
Saves you time. Perfect.
In the long run, it works to save you time because we teach studios, hey, are you spending, is every teacher coming to class stretching? So if your students are coming for a 4-hour span and each teacher takes 15, 20 minutes to warm up, that was overkill. You just lost potentially an hour of time. Stretch the first class, do the right stretches, and then just go to your classes and bust it out. Then go do the technique, do all those things. So studio owners are actually saving time.
Oh, I love that.
And it's just a win-win. So yeah, okay.
It's definitely a win-win. So your website is mUvmethod.com, and it's mUvmethod.com. And you have the free trial. So you could just go to mUvmethod.com, mUvmethod.com/free trial. And that gives you a good taste of everything that Christine has been talking about today on our recording. And then Christine, I'm going to link to this freebie that you're going to be able to leave for our listeners, which is amazing. So tell them a little bit about the goodie that you have for them.
Yeah, so it's just a downloadable PDF, and it will go into more depth on flexibility, what regulates flexibility. So you'll learn a little bit about the nervous system, the fascial system, the skeletal system, the muscular system. It's going to identify 4 common stretch pitfalls that we're all falling into and give you solutions to avoid those common stretch pitfalls. And just know this, we're all falling into them, so no big deal. We just need to acknowledge them so that we can be more aware when they present themselves. And then it provides a 20-minute stretch sequence that you can literally start doing with your students today.
Oh, I love that. That's great. So Christine, thank you for being such a positive influence. We all know, like you mentioned, stretching and incorporating something into the curriculum that is kind of uncomfortable to begin with. You've taken and demystified that. You've given us a great education today. And I think that our listeners are going to really reap the benefits of what you have to offer. And then besides your website, is there an email address where they can reach you, or how can they get in touch with you if they want more information?
Yes, so they can just email info@mUvmethod, and that will go to my my director of all things, and then she'll forward it on to me. So she sifts through the emails and she takes on what she can, and then she sends everything to me. And you can follow us on Instagram. So we're always posting educational content on Instagram, and that's mUvmethod, mUvmethod. And we're on YouTube, and we are on Facebook as well.
Fantastic. Well, Christine, this has been super helpful, really great content. I am so excited to have the opportunity to sit down and see you face to face again. So thank you so much for your time and talent. It's been great chatting with you today.
Oh, thank you. So happy to do it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Dance Studio 411. Visit us online at dancestudio411.com for more great resources and to submit a question for a future episode. Our #1 goal is to help you build a successful dance studio business and keep your passion for dance alive.